and thank you for joining me in the New World podcast. Today, I am going to be talking about something that I absolutely adore. Mushrooms! Or the wonderful world of fungi. I think that a lot of people have these expectations about fungi based off of, like horror media. I think it was The Last of Us or something along that name that, what's his name? Pedro Pascal stars in, where they have that weird fungi that starts taking over the entire world, just like corrupting people's minds. I think that's the one. Or, yeah, The Last of Us. Then there's that one really weird fungi that exists in real life, which is found in the tropical rainforest, which basically controls the minds of ants. I've seen videos of it. You should look it up if you are curious. I don't exactly remember what it's called. I believe it's just something on the nose like zombie fungi, the one that controls ants. And you'll see that it absolutely takes over entire ant colonies. And it causes them to act strangely. I believe that it forces the ants to bring nutrients to them or something along those lines. Actually, no, I think it just freezes them in place and decomposes their bodies if they're still alive. Don't quote me on that, but really freaky things that if you watch a video on it or even just read an article, look at a few pictures, you go, I'm never going to step outside again. Thank you, world, for showing me another reason why not to want to live in you. But that's the minority of fungi. Fungi, overall, are something so crucial that most of the plant kingdom would not exist without it. And that's extraordinary to think about, because it wasn't until really the later half of the 20th century, that we started digging more into mycology, because until then, we still thought mushrooms were just a funky type of plant that kind of fleshier and mysterious and just ominous. But it's not. It is its whole own part of the plant kingdom. And if you were in a biology class, it was probably one of those things where you guys kind of talked about it just to establish, hey, so this is a thing that exists, but you're not really going to learn about it besides it isn't a plant, it decomposes things. Life could not live without it. I don't know the statistic of it, but I do believe that fungus is one of the top decomposers in our soil. And that's a key word there. Soil. Depending on where you live, you have an environment, right? You'll have an environment either way, and it can look completely different from mine. I'll tell you what mine looks like. Right now I'm getting blessed because it's actually raining where I am right now. But typically, how my environment looks like is dry. It's dry. It is a tough ground. So if you go camping, those stakes that you have that you need to pitch your tent with, good luck. Find yourself a nice rock and some tough stakes, because there's a good chance that they might bend if you're not careful. Because it's happened to me a handful of times, especially when I was first starting to camp. It also isn't something where, let's say you lived in Oregon, if you went out into the Oregon great vast beautiful forest. You could probably go to the ground and you would find something loamy. So there's a lot of aeration going through it. There is if you take it up to your nose and you gave it a nice whiff, and don't judge me here. Sometimes you just need to take a nice whiff from the ground, because it can tell you so much about the type of organic material living inside of it. It'll smell earthy. It won't just clog your nose. It won't just straight up bring dust into your lungs and make you feel all stuffy inside and have you puffing up some great big coughs. It'll restore just a nice part of yourself. At least that's how I feel. Maybe I'm getting too weirdly into detail about it, but where I live, you probably couldn't even scoop up stuff, like just soil, and I say that in quotation marks, because the soil here is more like dirt, because there isn't that organic material, there isn't the aeration it needs, which is why it's so tough. It has a lot of clay material, and one of the key components that it's missing is, one, it doesn't have the microbial life it needs to break down the organic material that does die. Two, it doesn't have the bigger life forms like worms. We have some rodents here that do help air it out, but it doesn't have the smaller insectoids and just the smaller life forms that you need in order to air out soil and create that volume in it, which helps with that decomposing process. And that's it. Sorry, my words are not wording. And third, it doesn't have the moisture it needs. Now, the desert mushrooms that grow here are adapted to that. This is the part where we use a little bit of mushroom anatomy. And I got myself a great big book of mushrooms. And for viewers out there that aren't too familiar with the word of fungi, we're gonna go through Fungi 101, because I made a mistake there when I said mushrooms. Technically speaking, mushrooms, the part that, you put on your pizza, that you maybe pick out of your pizza, maybe you fight your dad because you said he didn't want mushrooms on the pizza, but he did it anyway, but now it's ruining your freaking meat lovers. Well, that is the fruiting body of the fungi. Meaning, if we're comparing it to something like a plant, that is the flower, that is your fruit, that is the apple on the tree. The actual tree lives underground, and it's called mycelium. Now, mycelium is very similar to what a root would be, like a plant root, but it has several different ways of reproducing. I wouldn't be able to tell you all of them. I haven't really reviewed that in a while, but it's very interesting, and it works in segmented parts. Now, I won't go, again, too into it because I don't understand it fully at the moment, but I understand it enough to tell you that mycelium can take up miles and miles and miles of space in one tiny container, because the fibers are so delicate and small, and they can compound themselves in very little space, so that they can maximize the amount of moisture they consume, the amount of minerals, organic nutrients, and this is actually where plants come in. So it has been more explored, the relationship between plants and fungi, because what researchers have been starting to notice is that plants actually thrive a lot more when they have a fungi counterpart. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, aren't fungi those little guys that, invade the trunks and the stems of my plants and eat them up? Well, it depends on what type of fungi you're talking about. For the most part, fungi either don't care for your devil's ivy, or they actually want to help it. I can't find the exact statistic here. I'm going to try and look for it. I bought the Growing Gourmet and Medicinal Mushrooms 3rd edition by Paul Stamets, who is a pioneer in the fungi world. He has written a great amount of novels. He has done research in all sorts of places, I think across 3 continents, being North America, where he was born, Europe, and then Asia. I'm not sure if he's been to South America, but he has dedicated so much of his life just to doing fungal research. And he's very knowledgeable, and he does his own experiments, and I think he's kind of inspirational for having such a commitment to such an misunderstood part of the biological world, because I do think that fungi are quite cool. So he talks a lot about forests and how forests wouldn't thrive as much if it weren't for their fungal counterparts. Let me look for the right section. I'm going to read a little section here where he talks about the genetic diversity of forest lands. Studies in Europe show a frightening loss of species diversity in forest lands, most evident with the rhizal species, which is just fungal species. Many mycologists fear many mushroom varieties and even species will soon become extinct. As the mycorrhizal species decline in both numbers and variety, the populations of sporophytic and parasitic fungi initially rise as the direct result of the increased availability of dead wood debris. So sporophytic fungi are, let me look for the exact definition in here. Wood decomposing fungi, the premier recyclers on the planet. The filamentous mycelial network is designed to weave between and through the cell walls of plants. The enzymes and acids they secrete degrade large molecular complexes into simpler compounds. All ecosystems depend on fungi's ability to decompose organic plant matter soon after it is rendered available. The end of their activity is the return of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and minerals back into the ecosystem in forms usable to plants, insects, and other organisms. And some of the minerals listed there are key drivers of life in soil, so they're very, very important. Okay. Of wood debris. However, as wood lots are burned and replanted, the complex mosaic of natural forests is replaced by a highly uniform monospecies landscape. Because the replanted trees are nearly identical in age, the cycle of debris replenishing the forest floor is interrupted. This new ecosystem cannot support the myriad fungi, insects, and small mammals, birds, mosses, and flora so characteristic of ancestral forests. In pursuit of commercial forests, the native ecology has been supplemented by a biologically anemic woodlot. The woodlot landscape is barren in terms of species diversity. And as you may know, a lot of what I talk about on this podcast is about maintaining that species diversity in ecosystems precisely for this one reason. If we stop it, then there's a good chance that your yields are going to suffer, because nature is intended to work in a certain way. Is it a little bit more complex? Yes. But it's also more efficient in the long run. And he even talks about in this book a way to use fungi in permaculture. So fungi are pretty fun guys. I'm sorry, I had to make that joke. If you're talking about fungi, you automatically have to make that joke. And again, I can't find the exact section that talks about the percentage of plants species that help rather than hinder these plant species. I can keep looking for it, but I myself am trying it right now in my own garden beds. I'm trying to get an outdoor oyster mushroom collection started. The problem is that I don't think the mycelium is catching. But I will talk about that in my findings in this process a little bit more in the next mini section, because that was a lot of information. So if you just want to sit down and let that kind of sink in, maybe go back and do some gardening, maybe do your own research, while letting all that information process, then go for it. But I will be here in the next bit-sized podcast, waiting for you to come back. All right, have a lovely, whatever time of the day it is where you are at.